All right, so it's
Wow.
9:31,
Oh.
December 9th, 2025. Call to order the Concord Transportation Advisory Committee meeting and call roll online. Rebecca,
Here.
Dan,
Here.
and in the room, Ellen,
Here.
Phil,
Here.
Nick,
Here.
and myself, Mark.
Yeah.
Do I have a volunteer to take minutes for today? Phil did the last one, who did before that?
Mark, I'll do it. I haven't done it in a while. I'll do it. This is
Okay.
Rebecca.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate that. So we have two sets of minutes to approve. One is from October and one is from November. Are there any corrections or edits for the October 28th, 2025 minutes?
I was just adding my name to the attendees virtually, Mark.
Okay, so that was virtual. And on Zoom. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Do I have, okay, how about the November 18th minutes? No. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the October 28th, 2025 minutes as amended and the November 18th, 2025 TAC minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes, October 20th as amended and as written the November 18th minutes.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Ellen,
Approve?
Phil,
Yes.
Dan, Rebecca,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and Mark, yes. Okay, thank you very much.
I have a quick question about the minutes.
Yes,
This is actually a question maybe for Heather, but maybe for you. After we approve the minutes, does Heather make the corrections and then post them? Is that how? it's working at
what
this point?
I've been doing is I would make the corrections, pass them to Heather, have her finalize the formatting and post it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I think it's pretty flexible as long as it's done and if there's any problem somebody finds later, we can always revisit.
Okay, yeah, I think it's good.
Amend things and stuff.
That's just good.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with regard to chair's remarks, I don't have too much. I'll just mention again that the Stantec online workshop, 7 short surveys is open for public input, comments, suggestions through this Wednesday, tomorrow, December 10th. And I also mentioned that as a comment at the beginning of last night's select board meeting. It had dropped off the first page of the town website and Lisa arranged to have it put back on because it's kind of the end of the process there. It'd be great to have more input. I also want to mention that right now we don't have another TAC meeting scheduled. 3 weeks from now is December 30th. If there's no objection, I'll kind of pencil that in, but we can check with people about availability. We could push the next meeting out into January. I am not available on January 6th because that's our meeting Christmas. I would ask Alyssa if there's going to be, do we anticipate in 3 weeks having some more information from Stantec to kind of go over that we'd want to have a meeting on the 30th or, just generally, people have any thoughts about have another meeting in 2025 or?
It's going to be
Push it to
super
January.
busy. I
Yeah.
mean, everyone's got plans.
I don't think there's gonna be necessarily anything to review from the transportation
Mhm.
strategy at that point. We have Stantec is reviewing all the input from the public meetings. And I don't think there's gonna be anything ready in terms of like a deliverable to review by the end of the month or, I guess, prior to the meeting. So probably be better use of time not to meet again this month and focus on
Okay.
January meetings.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in January, the there's Monday the fifth, and then there's the week of the 12th. How would people feel about January fifth?
Or why not keep in the regular 3 week?
Keeping the big, well, the sixth I can't,
Tuesdays,
the sixth I
That's
can't
okay.
make.
Oh, that's.
but the 3 week would be the 14th, 20th, right?
20th, okay,
Of
does
January?
that sound good? 20th of January,
Um,
okay,
seems like a long
Is
time.
that okay and for Stantec, you think, timing?
Yeah,
I mean, we can always pull it in as.
If you want a
to do
sooner one,
all-
just keep it on Tuesday at the same time, because it's.
Okay, why don't we
that works for me.
Why don't we
Okay.
say January 20th, and in the meantime, if there's a desire to have a meeting earlier than that, let me know and we can do a poll and double check with people.
Okay.
But I agree, it's interesting how keeping it on the same day of the week, even though it's every third week, is helpful for people to remember. Okay, so, what I want to say now is, we have two items on the agenda, which are, related to, transportation, projects, and initiatives. And, one is the update from Alyssa on, Stantec strategy and anything we might have heard from MassDOT. The other one is item 6, which is to discuss current right-of-way construction projects and the planning for those. Alan Cathcart, the Director of Public Works, has kindly agreed to come to the meeting here to discuss item 6. And because there's a strong connection, I think, between how we're going forward, going to be approaching these projects in the public right of way, with the Stantec strategy work, consistent with open meeting law, I'm gonna move item 6 to after item 3, because there's a connection and a synergy between those two. So we'll start with item 3 on the agenda, an update from Elisa.
Yeah, so I just have a few updates. So, on the transportation strategy. So as you mentioned, the online, workshop is open for people to interact with, provide feedback until tomorrow, December 10th. We had a really great turnout at the public workshops on, November 19th already. It's like a long time ago. We had over 100 people in person. We have had 15 responses so far. That was as of last week to the online workshop. So that's great. We're getting input still on that. Stantec, as part of this, will be creating a memo, just kind of outlining the process for the public action, what they heard at the public forum. So kind of similar to what they did last time. And we would post that on the project website when that's available too. So and then there was a question, I think, Rebecca had a question about Route 2 and some of the work around that. So, so Public Works, there was a question about the corridor, the Route 2 corridor study.
Mm.
And, so basically right now, town staff and the MCI advisory board, and Stantec have been attending quarterly meetings with the MassDOT Highway Division. And I think, kind of turn it over, is Alan here? So did you want to provide an update on the quarterly meetings that we've been having?
Yeah, hi, Alan Cathcart, Director of Public Works. Real quickly, so MassDOT, it's interesting, there is a discussions going with MassDOT and DCAM. And they're both kind of important entities and players along with Concord. As Elisa said, Stantec has been retained to sort of shadow those activities on our behalf. We have had a couple of updates where it's interesting where MassDOT has really acknowledged Concord's interests, which is nice. They repeated it to us. It doesn't mean they're necessarily going to take an action, but we know they've heard us. We also know that DCAM is equally interested in trying to figure out this piece of the puzzle for the MCI redevelopment. So we have another state entity who's equally interested in sort of resolving this. We are planning a meeting, it was gonna be December, I think they've sort of postponed it now, it's just based on sort of the season scheduling conflicts for a meeting in January, but things are moving, but just as I'm here today to talk a little bit about expectations, and this is a long play with MassDOT.
Mhm.
They have volunteered an interesting sort of short-term potential strategy of something that might be realized within a 5-year period.
Short term, that's right.
Versus the long-term 10 to 20 something. But they are being creative and even looking at an interim plan because of the redevelopment interests from the state on MCI property. So that's just a high-level update. It's positive, but again, this is gonna take a long process, but just having DCAM as a partner to try and
Move that.
move them along is gonna be very advantageous for Concord.
Yeah,
Alan,
and so-
do these discussions include not just the rotary redesign, but also the Route 2 study that was presented about a year ago?
The focus has been from the Baker Ave intersection
Oh, yeah.
up to the Rotary, but there's been other conversations about connectivity downstream or towards, Boston.
Okay.
So that is,
Connectivity meaning across Route 2.
that's right, that's right. Those discussions are happening as well, with
Good.
some concepts are being,
So, yeah,
Just a minute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just wanted to, just to dovetail on that, that they, are looking at potential, short-term bike pedestrian improvements at the Route 62 interchange. So they have, are developing conceptual plans. They don't have engineering level plans ready. But they said they would have them, and it sounds like a long time from now, but it's MassDOT, but, they talked about having them ready, in like a couple of years to basically show to the public, and so they're not quite ready, but I think what we're gonna do is try to advocate for some of the recommendations coming out of the transportation strategy to MassDOT, and even though the focus of these meetings is the Rotary, it's also a good venue for us to be able to advocate for some of the bicycle and pedestrian accommodations on Route 2 and other intersections too, so
Helen,
that's.
I had two questions for
Yeah.
you just on that.
Yeah.
Does the fact that Route 62 is such a corridor between West Concord and Concord, any concern at all to MassDOT, or do they just say,
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's of concern.
just because it means increased traffic and increased levels and types of traffic, which means increased safety concerns?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, their question was whether Route 2 Rotary, is that I forget the term for it, but where you're level to, you're not having overpasses.
flyover.
What's,
at
what,
grade, yeah.
at that, thank you, at grade, is at grade what they're talking about, or is it more
There's-
flyovers too?
These are all, it's concept, so they're exploring both.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you for
Mhm.
telling us that they're actually thinking.
Oh, no,
That's
there's-
that's good, but
DCAM is very excited
Yeah.
about what they're hearing from MassDOT.
Hmm.
I will volunteer. Some seasoned engineers in town are a little less optimistic because they know how MassDOT works, but we also have. The interesting thing with MassDOT is we have District 3 and 4 entities involved, depending on where you are in that section.
it's West 3 and
There's
West.
there's two districts, entities that are points, depending on if you're,
MassDOT's
yeah,
partitioning of.
Right.
right by Acton.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
that's
oh,
three?
let's see, okay,
Yeah.
that close,
Yeah,
so it's 3 and 4.
exactly. It's just interesting to have players, but the good news is they're all at the table.
Then I think all that cross communication, long-term going forward is vital.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise, we're just gonna spin the
Yeah.
wheels.
So I had a quick question for Alyssa in terms of the short term ideas, are these what capital ideas like, redoing roads, or is it more equipment ideas like redoing light signals and push buttons and cameras and that type of stuff.
Are you talking about?
This is the Route 62 crossing.
I don't have, the plan to refer to. I think it is actual, from what I remember them showing, it's like a actual pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, not just the signal. changes.
Modest reconfiguration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So like.
so they're not talking about building a bridge or.
No, it was actually the intersection itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
comes, what might modest accommodation mean?
I mean,
Changing the bump outs or areas to cross
Making it more
between,
clear where
looking
the
at the
pedestrian-
geometry of that intersection.
Because one of the things I know I've heard from people is that the slip lane at
Yeah,
Route
slip lane's
62,
dangerous.
you know, can that be eliminated as a short term? Just because bicyclists are always having to look back to be sure they're not gonna be
Yeah.
rear-ended, and that seems to be if you think of that as a corridor, I guess it would be really nice if Stantec and their shadowing, I love that word, can communicate to MassDOT some of the concerns of bicyclists and pedestrians who are going along that corridor and where it's.
So here's the
problem.
great news.
What's
We're
the great
working-
news?
We're working with the Stantec Public Works with the engineering group,
Yeah,
planning's working with the planning group, and we have them both talking.
Yeah.
that is.
So I
great.
guess that is one really great thing that's coming out of the transportation strategy, I think, is it's not just gonna be the plan, but I feel like, planning and engineering are working much better together. And we have a Stantec planning team working with the Stantec engineering team, and we're really collaborating, and this partnership is something that is, has grown even just since starting the transportation strategy plan. So I think that is, just process wise, that's been like a real improvement, not like no one was talking to each other before, but having those two groups talk together, I think has been really beneficial.
It's going to
And the
plan,
outcome
to
of this.
plan to what's engineeringly feasible and for engineering
Mhm.
to kind of see the concepts and have, I mean, that's brilliant. And having worked in high tech a long time, I know how it's really, you can plan everything in the world, but it's got to be built.
Exactly.
Yeah, I should understand
The the other thing just mentioned, I already wrote an email, but we received the Safe Routes to School grant for the Alcott
Oh, great.
school, which is great. And so Elizabeth Hughes worked with engineering, Justin in engineering to develop that application. That's a $10,000 grant for the Signs and Lines program, and it will be used for low cost infrastructure improvements such as signage, ADA compliant curb ramps, pavement markings to improve safety and accessibility. And that was really, part of the reason behind that was really Stantec's work in advocacy on safe routes to school. So I want to
That's
thank
good.
you all for that as well. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to the next, Alan.
So
Next
I
item.
have a quick question. This is actually for Alan. The last go round, I don't know if you recall this, but there was, I think, a little bit of a misunderstanding about the Safe Routes to School grant being a reimbursement grant as opposed to, them cutting us a check in advance. So I just wanted to remind you of that. The other thing is, I was wondering, is there any road program project that is planned for the vicinity of the Alcott School in the coming year? Reason why I ask that is, I noticed that the scope of the Safe Routes project is developed by MassDOT. They have their own engineers design it. The thing I noticed about the way it was actually implemented, however, was once you get outside of the scope, like immediately outside of the scope, there are things that are just not done, which could have been done by a contractor if they've been told to do, an additional crosswalk here, or, a stripe or a sign or something like that. So I'm wondering if it's possible to advance a project in that neighborhood to take advantage of the grant and kind of leverage it.
Can I put that on pause and give you an update and answer? that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, Alan. Thank you
Okay.
very much for being here. I
Sure.
Really appreciate.
Yeah,
making-
and I just want to echo, Lisa's sort of comment in the fact that it's pretty exciting what we've been able to achieve, getting Stantec to start understanding what we want. And Ellen, as you mentioned, you know, I've sort of been, as not an expert in either the planning or engineering, it's kind of fascinating to see the evolution of these two groups. And what I've realized, and this is sort of important, we have plans. And the challenge with plans, as Ellen mentioned, you tell the firm what you want and they will deliver. There's no, I mean, it's the question of, is it aspirational or is it practical? That's not their job. That's our job to try and figure out. Plans can give you everything under the sun. The challenge with engineers are, well, what do we do with it? And I've heard that from Steve Dukeran from day one. We are now starting to realize that the engineers are learning, and this is unique, to start looking at these interests and goals of the town, to start considering how do we factor that into the engineering, and having the two in the same firm talking is starting to come back as we start hearing from the engineering team as far as their work to date. I wanted to bring you up to speed as far as what they've been tasked to do, where we are in the process, but basically taking all of the input, and I'm calling them activities, of different reports of a need, interest, you know, whether it's identified because staff knows there's infrastructure problem or a resident has flagged something as a concern. That's an activity. They have over 230 activities that were brought in by different venues. Some of it could be complete street, safe route to school, community, you know, question or concern, staff. They've compiled it. And we've been talking about this master list, and you've heard about this, you know, where are these inquiries or questions? Well, they have gone through what we're going to call the first phase of a screening and compilation. And let's consider it a engineering assessment, knowing, you know, not just strict engineering, but it's based on infrastructure, understanding, you know, condition of the infrastructure, on people, and people can mean, you know, sort of sensitive populations or vulnerable populations or needs, and place, location kind of matters, you know, something in the center of town that affects a lot of activity might be different than something very removed. And they're going through this, what I call an engineering assessment with those softer things factored in, where they're going to give us a list of these activities with a ranking. That ranking is important because it's just based on, you know, sort of, you don't have to interpret it, just based on some of the facts. They're almost complete with that assignment. It's been taking an effort. They're going to be providing it to staff very shortly, expect in the next couple of weeks. We're going to start vetting it to understand, you know, what does this ranking look like? Does it make sense to us? Once we have that, we're going to regroup with sort of we have this sort of kind of almost like a steering committee, where Mark has been sort of a player. Andrea Solomon, who's here from Public Works, has been involved. Paul Bohm from the Select Board has been involved. And so then we'll go through this, because it's the first vetting. Before you go public, you don't want to give them piecemeal information. It just confuses people. You know, what's the value if it's not clear and concise? Once we go through that, I think the interest is going to be, we have a rank activity database. The next question is, well, what do we do with that? What does that ranking mean? Ranking doesn't include, for instance, cost.
Oh.
A project could rank number one based on all the criteria. It'd be $5 million. So the question is, are we going to tackle that project? Or do we have to look at the whole list and figure out, you know, there's a budget, and that's going to be the interesting part of how do we marry resources to the needs that have been identified. And so that's where the next phase is going to be, I think, more engaged with the community, certainly with TAC, you know, being sort of a very important player, where we start trying to identify, and I don't even want to use the word prioritization yet, but maybe what with these projects, you know, bin might they fall into? It's nice to know, we have it captured, this is a priority, it's gonna fit within fill a project or in the area that we're planning to do because of the roads and pavement project. And so that's the connection of the schedule of things is no longer in a vacuum, things pop up and then we react. There's gonna be, our roads program is planned, it's defined based on pavement needs. It's not what you want, it's basically the condition of the pavement, the kind of treatment. That's over a 5-year period, and it's just a program that's available, it's online as we speak. The question becomes, now what are these activities that might marry into them and how? Is it a simple, does it need to wait for that project? Is it a standalone? It's reasonable, it's ranked high, low cost, it's independent of a project, so it's efficient, you would just do it? Or do we wait a year because it's more efficient, because it can be dovetailed into this construction project? We're gonna start making those things in decisions that have to happen in a reasonable phase and schedule, not reacting to everything. And so that's where we're really getting to the point where that's what we hope to deliver. I will say it's really important for this group to understand, I'm gonna give you an example of where our existing model doesn't work and why. I'm gonna use something that is very visible right now, Main Street and the Baker Ave intersection. So I just, for this group's benefit, this project has been in the works probably for decades. When I say in the works, it's been a sore spot engineers, town has identified for a long time. Everybody knows it's been a problem. It's an awkward intersection. You got utility poles in the middle. Well, at some point that gets realized as it becomes something that's going to be a priority, which means it's a project, it's budgeted. So you go into it with conceptual plans or preliminary plans and you say, a budget, we need about $1.2 million. That's a big ask to the town. Where are we gonna get it? How do we cobble together $1.2 million for this high need, high visibility project? That started several years ago. And as a result of a number of things, it was delayed. Some of it just based on staffing, some of it based on just COVID activities, some of it based on just not having the funding available, some based on we need to do some easement work with the abutters to kind of realize what this is gonna be. So this has been a couple of years of discussions, meetings, outreach, with a fixed budget. And by the way, if you pay attention to the town finance, people really care about every dime. So when you say we need $1.2 million and things happen, including a delay, well, we see construction delays 25%, so not unusual for a year delay, depending on. Things escalate. We finished the work or close to finish the design before we had any additional funding that might be available through this recent authorization for the roads and safety before. At the time, the price is already bumped up to about $1.8 million. Not to have any changes to, well, now can we do something? So when we talk about a schedule, and it's very important for a large project like that, you have to go through a concept. You have, based on the resources available, you adapt the concept to fit the budget and the needs. And while there was certainly, sort of an interest on what more can we do with the intersection, you got the kind of, probably I'd say bare bones, but the most efficient improvement with the resources that were available. Well, at 1.8, we're now at a point where the engineers are looking to finish this project. And now that we have this new initiative, there's a lot more interest in, well, what can we do? Can we change something? And so in the 11th hour from the engineer, it's not a complaint, it's just the reality. There was.
As long as I can see.
Oh, is that okay? Okay.
Yeah,
Never mind.
as long as,
Okay.
if any, but just, open meeting law, if anybody comes there, please let them in.
So as far as kind of a schedule, we're now reacting to citizens who are volunteering. I have this dire need. Why haven't you looked at this? Well, the conditions have changed. And it's a little bit challenging for staff to say, whoa, let's stop, let's reconsider. It's not that they can't, it's just difficult at that point. That's not when you typically integrate that kind of planning into a design. That's just not a normal thing. We have heard the concerns. We know it's been publicly kind of, we get emails. We have literally citizens providing design guidance. They're not engineers, but they're citizens. And it's not that we want to dismiss it, but we have to professionally digest this and figure out maybe there's a concept in there we can consider. But we're working with an engineer who has a stamp who has to take the responsibility for whatever changes to the design. So we're trying to respond to that, but it takes some time. And we're reevaluating to see, can there be some adjustments that could be done without major, redesign and change in schedule. But that does take some time. And quite honestly, the way that's coming at us is difficult to manage. And it's difficult to meet an expectation, especially if someone who doesn't either appreciate or recognize the process. And the challenge is that happens in a vacuum because TAC hears about it, the select board here, but it's kind of piecemeal. I can tell you that's not the way we should be doing things. It's not efficient, it's not effective, and it can be pretty frustrating for process and costly. Going back to your point, Phil, we don't want to repeat that. We fortunately have the opportunity to develop, and I'm kind of here, from Paul Bohm in my ear, process. This whole effort that we're going through, working with planning, Stantec, TAC, Public Works Commission, is define a process so it's streamlined, efficient, and moving forward. I'm excited because we will have all this information, and we know that the right time to have the question on what's the input is early on as we're starting to look at the concept and preliminary design. And now that we're going to be informed with some of the work that Stantec has done, which has really sort of collected the interest. I'll have to say the challenge with the engineers are planners can give you anything you want in a planning document. There's really no liability there. Engineers, when they're designing and overseeing construction, have to stamp something where there's some liability. So those things that what a planner might say would be nice, the engineer has to figure out, can we do it? And are we willing to stand by that design? And we've had a conversation, and I just wanted to, so this group hears, because these are all things percolating. There is an expert that was brought in by the mothers out front, Dr. Firth.
Yeah.
On cycling. We had, there was we were invited to a meeting to attend a mothers out front meeting where Dr. Firth was going to express sort of his experience. He's, I think recognized in the industry of, sort of doing innovative designs and constrained for cycling, done a lot of work overseas, especially at Northeastern. I basically volunteered. I would love it if staff could meet this individual because we don't know, never met him, don't know what his credentials are. So he gave us a benefit of attending one of our meetings. Elisa was there, and we had police, Public Works, our engineers to talk. And he had some very interesting sort of ideas and concepts that we'll listen, we'll kind of understand. So we've made some progress. We're kind of listening. We then hear that he's, after we've had this, what I said, cordial discussion at a public meeting, talking about, I can't remember how he defined the Main Street and Baker Ave intersection, but sort of as a, publicly a disaster or something, or, just not helpful. And so we just need to figure out how we can do our job, get the right input, work with the right boards and committees, and just make sure that we can head these things off early on in the process. I just wanted to respond because staff has been dealing with this real time, but we're also trying to do our, a lot of work. And so, Phil, we are in the process of looking at our 2026 construction season schedule where we have resources now, which are really important, more than we've had in the past. And so we're going to be looking at those corridors dovetail with the planning and this database that we're creating to try and create those most efficient nexus of what the town's already identified. But the road pavement is not gonna be, it can be influenced by that, but I think what we're gonna see is those things can be integrated. And as long as we understand when and why, I think that's what the community expects. And we also have to be mindful of somewhere we have $2.5 million over the next 5 years that we want to kind of use as the fuel. And the case of how do we determine which of those projects are going to be sort of integrated? I think that's the common conversation that I think PAC's going to be involved with. You know, and not after the fact, but early on. That's the hope.
So,
Sorry, but that's kind of the high level overview of what we've been up to in the last couple of months.
two questions. One, what do you mean the engineers have to stamp the design? What is the risk that an individual engineer takes?
There's a liability if there's a injury, accident, and some attorney comes to say, you know, my client was injured here. We want to look at the design and configuration of this. Who owns that? It's the engineer of record who owns that. That's the liability.
Yeah.
The person who put his engineer.
Yeah, no, I didn't, I realized it was a personal liability.
And that becomes the issue of how much, you know, and again, there's can be some flexibility. But it's difficult when a planner tells an engineer, do this. It's not the planner stamp, it's the engineer's stamp. That's what I'm seeing. I'm just sharing.
That's good.
That is a challenge.
So another just question, just in general, when you say, you know, I understand the concept, if you're in the middle of Baker Ave 62, which everyone hates, and you're getting input, can you give us some examples of some things that were particularly difficult to kind of overlay what you're doing? Like I heard at the forum, the request for a bike lane.
Yeah.
Or what's easy, what's hard, if you can help me and us understand.
No, I can't, and I won't, because I won't give you the right information.
Oh, how do
But
we
no,
have that?
our engineering group and, you know, so the intersection was designed by Jacobs Engineering. Our engineering group works with them. I'm just telling you, I don't know, I haven't even looked at the design plan in detail to figure out, was it a bike lane, is it a utility pole? I'm only saying I haven't. My engineering group probably could, but those are the discussions to have very early on, because then you can make sort of accommodations. You can look at is it just, you know, line striping? Is it land taking? Is it, you know, moving of utilities to accommodate? Those are things that are detailed design that I couldn't.
Okay,
sort
I'm
of
just saying as a
summarize
member
for
of
you.
TAC who gets a lot of solicits inputs and gets a lot of.
Oh, you
input,
do, yeah.
It would be really nice to have, you know, somebody able to sort of just articulate and not asking the engineer to, I don't know, put a stamp on this, but, you know, to help us understand. So what were the requests and why was it difficult? Because I think that that's something I don't understand. If I don't understand it, a picture of the public doesn't understand.
Right, we're not at a point where we could share that with you because
Okay.
we received it as being communicated to the engineer of record who did the
Well-
design. They're looking at it and then they will give us back some feedback. Then there might be a
Okay, all right.
conversation we can
So
have.
it's premature.
Oh, yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Phil?
So, thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. I understand how difficult it is to coordinate the efforts of lots of different people. I also understand how long this has been going on. And I will say for the record that I am one of those people who have made comments at the last minute, in part because I have a lot of questions. I had not been privy to the information that has been made publicly available until relatively recently. I drilled down and tried to sort of assimilate as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And I had some very specific questions and concerns about the way that this has been handled. I'll give you the high level, okay? The high level is that the way that the project has been presented, at least to the public, through the boards, we've been told this is the way it is. At the last meeting that was available online, it was the Public Works Commission. The chair told me, well, this is where, you know, the date, the time. I made it my business to listen to the discussion. And the input that was made with respect to some design decisions, I thought about. I went out and investigated the site. And, you know, as somebody who is not an engineer, but someone who has experience in some public positions, both as a conservation commissioner and sitting on this committee, I said to myself, these design decisions don't make any sense. And the rationale that was presented at the public hearing doesn't make any sense. It's illogical.
Mhm.
So we can get into the details, but you know, basically, I said, if this is an illogical design decision, what else is an illogical design decision? Okay, and then I thought to myself, well, what else has been discussed at this public hearing? I heard two comments made with respect to level of service at the intersection. Level of service is a traffic engineering metric, which is basically all about how to get the most number of cars through a given intersection in the most efficient manner. There is a buried down in this list of criteria, the issue of public safety. Okay, but it's down there. It's not at the top of the list. My concern about this intersection is that in the entire discussion at the Public Works Commission and the discussion here, there hasn't been a discussion of public safety. And, you know, I'll just put it on the table. In my world, in, you know, as the sort of bike advocate or the advocate for the vulnerable road user, public safety needs to be at the top of the criteria or close to the top of the criteria. And if it turns out that at the last minute, there are, you know, design revisions that are necessary to accommodate public safety, because we don't want somebody killed or hurt seriously, then that's the way it's just got to be. And, you know, if the Public Works department has to go back to the town and say, look at, we have received information that is, you know, indicative of a public safety issue or concern. You know, that to me is just what your job has got to be. It's got to be public safety. If this is all about moving cars and trucks over Route 62, we have lost an opportunity to achieve the other goals of what the town has talked about, which is moving people from one part of the town to the other by getting them out of their cars. Okay. And in this particular intersection, and I'll shut up after this particular intersection is particularly problematic because of the numbers of people. We're not talking about an intersection at the Carlisle border, right? We're not talking about up there. We're not talking about, you know, somewhere off, you know, down Lexington Road near, you know, near Hanscom Field. We're talking about where there is a population density that's pretty much as high as you're going to get. And many of those people, because Concord Green is right there, are, you know, either elderly, handicapped, etc. Potentially, if we have the Novo project, maybe we'll get some more families going, you know, with kids commuting to school. So this is where I say public safety has got to be up there. So it brings me up to the last point, which is you made a reference earlier to the way that the projects are ranked. You're not necessarily saying this is a priority list,
Right.
but you are saying that, you know, Stantec has helped develop a ranking system, which in my mind it sort of implies that there is a scoring system of some sort.
Correct.
There's a you know, some way of saying, well, this is how this floats up to the top and the
Right.
bottom. What was missing from the Complete Streets initiative from 7 years ago, this is where I first met Nick, was not a transparent issue. It wasn't a metric. How the projects were scored, how they were ranked was a complete black box. So my hope is that this time around, when when you go forward with this,
Mhm.
you'll be able to say to the public when it rolls out, here's how we rank these projects. Here's our, scoring system.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be perfect.
Mhm.
There's always gonna be public input.
Yeah.
But I think that will help the public to have confidence that when these lists are developed, there's some rationale more than who screamed the loudest.
Right.
Because everybody's gonna scream and somebody's gonna scream the loudest.
No, unfortunately, not everybody does, and some should and don't, and that's what we're trying to address.
Maybe, but
Yeah.
my point is that we want these things to have some reflection of rationality. And that could mean, the budget has to, reflect the fact that some things we just can't do, right? We can't fix the Route 2 problem, irrespective of MassDOT, but we can't fix that problem. But we can fix certain other things. And this in particular intersection, I think is one of them.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's,
Can I just respond to that, just very quickly?
Yeah.
go
I
ahead.
agree with about 98% of what you said. The one,
That's good.
the one,
So we're still friends.
no, the one concern I have is the inference that Public Works isn't considering the safety as a top priority. I think that is the rub. That's part of the challenge we have. And all I'm saying is someone really owns that liability. And that's where I think we're trying to get through. But the rest of it, I think we're on the same page. You're kind of highlighting the need of what we're doing and why we're doing it, which is good. And, so I don't disagree.
I wanna
Yeah.
amplify one point Phil made, which is that I know from like observing what's happening with the land use committee. All the town's growth is gonna be happening in West Concord.
Yes.
It's gonna
Mhm.
get worse in
Yeah.
terms of traffic and safety issues, so
Mhm.
whatever's done there is gonna be very important for a long time.
And I would add, and this is just from the people I talk to and have heard about, that, I mean, I don't know if the level of service, how that ranks, and I actually, Alyssa, I'd just love you to kind of put a B in Stantec's here on this, but level of service is not a concern of most residents in Concord. They actually worry about cut through and want to limit the traffic. And all you have to do is look up in Acton and see the monster apartment complex that's going in along the river there to realize that Route 62 is going to be driven not by Concord residents, but by people outside of Concord that are just trying to avoid Route 2 at all costs. So it will get more dangerous. And so I guess I don't know where safety is in this ranking, but I think we're actually talking about, what do they call it, silent policemen in terms of, speed bumps or speed tables to actually reduce traffic to make it inconvenient. I hate to say it, but I will say it, for motorists to, speed through, because that's what causes the conflict, the angst, and, I hadn't thought about the engineering point of view, but I think whether it's Steve or whoever signs off on that, I would consider from their professional engineering status that they'd be extremely concerned about all those factors ending up with our hurt and death. I would just love if that conversation were, the TAC members were informed of it as it went along, as it goes along, because I hear, lots of screaming from
I
my
wanna,
friends.
I wanna say something, which is, I think, I agree with Phil that safety has to be the top priority. I think that, from my conversations with staff, and what I've seen, it is this that safe, it's top priority, and it's such a high priority that it is assumed. And we need not to assume it, we need to put it out there, and I urge members of the public, from my personal point of view, what they need to do is they need to ask how they can support staff and how they can advocate for more funding to include more safety related features, even if it means things take longer and cost more money and we do fewer projects, but we do them right. I also want to say that I really appreciate what Alan and Alyssa have been doing with the two Stantec consultant groups, because that together with TAC trying to reinvent itself a bit or readjust itself, and the traffic management group means that we can, jumping up, we have this situation that's existing based on not having this, and we really need to now say, how do we have a process how to develop a process, that produces better results. But again, anybody asking, in my personal opinion, anybody asking for reexamination of a plan that has all this, utility and private land, characteristics, that have to be dealt with, all these constraints. They need to know that, appreciate that, if they want it to be reexamined, they need to advocate for more money and stand up to people who are saying, essentially saying we don't have enough money for safety. That's the constraint. As Alan said, you could tell the consultants to design anything. It's the cost of it and the delays go up and up. And if that's what the public wants, that's what we should do, but we shouldn't blame the messenger. Maybe the messengers need to get the message out earlier. This is kind of analogous. I was disturbed to see a note in the paper about the public is going to be inconvenienced again by some road work. Well, you either want improvements and you put up with a little inconvenience, or you don't get improvements. And this is a much bigger, more important thing, the safety. I think safety has to be taught. We don't speak it enough. It is a very difficult thing, as Nick has pointed out, at meetings and things, there's perceptions and reality and whatever. The approaches to things develop over time, right? And we don't have a blank sheet of paper. We don't have a bunch of flat, undeveloped land to figure out how to make everything. We have a lot of constraints, and money is one of them. And I really urge people who want more to advocate for more resources.
Mark, I should be clear, we are considering the input. I mean, I wanted the Main Street settled, we are looking at what was provided. Just want to make that clear.
And is
there may be an opportunity.
More money being requested for
First,
reevaluation?
what's being proposed is, this is low cost, it's just paint on the street. I don't know what that means. If there's more money.
That's a constraint. And
It
that might
could
not
be, but that could be, maybe that's, I don't know yet. And
Okay.
maybe it's low cost and we can integrate it very easily. Maybe it isn't. And then there's a cost, and then we could say, look, we're at 1.2, 1.8
Mhm.
estimated cost. If we add $200,000 and we take it from the new funds that now are available,
Mhm.
then we can make that case and present it. But I just want to be clear that I don't know what that is, or, I'm not
Okay.
judging what was provided as.
And I want to say one other thing is that to me, as a different kind of engineer, it's very important to realize that many things interact. You cannot have necessarily A and B and C and D and E and F. They're trade-offs, not only in cost, but in space. But that's why, say, prioritizing safety at the beginning is important.
Yeah.
And the idea of throughput, as Ellen was saying, is of motor vehicles is not really the right thing. In fact, I thought when MassDOT made their presentations on the different zones and things, I was talking to the engineer and saying, you shouldn't be accommodating high speeds, you should accommodate smooth flow. And smooth flow at slower rates is safer, and this needs to be really thought out. Because we don't have real traffic engineering analysis here the way we want, prioritizing safety.
It happens all over. MassDOT's doing that with a rotary. They're looking at throughput.
Right.
Yeah.
Concord's looking at connectivity. So, those are the, maybe it's, peanut butter, chocolate. Who knows?
Okay, I noticed that Betsy has her hand raised. I'm gonna leave public comment till the end. We have several other things on the agenda, but I encourage you to stay and make public comment at the end. Andrea here, Chair of the Public Works Commission, wanted to make a comment.
Comment
Because
about
They've been brought up.
about the process. So I think what this intersection clearly shows us is this process isn't great, right? The
Yes.
public is not aware of what's happening until it comes to Public Works. And we're not
Mhm.
voting on a plan, it's just being presented in a public forum so that people know what's going on. But ideally, the process can start much earlier, which is what you guys are talking
Yeah.
about, engineering and planning working together. So the engineers get an idea, we want to do this intersection, they develop a part of it, maybe a quarter of it, 25% of it. Then they bring it to planning,
Mhm.
and planning presents it to TAC. which gives public input early on, what we want, what's the best case scenario, right? Then it goes back to engineering for the development of the rest of the plans. But while they're developing the rest of those, that 75% of the plans, it's continually brought back to TAC for public review to explain your best case scenario can't work because of this and this and this, but we can still get most of it. It's explaining throughout the process with that public input, those explanations as to why something can or can't work. And it is a chance to examine those plans as they are being made, so we're not waiting till the end and then everybody's upset. It's a chance to work it out during the process.
Right, and again, it's very important, the elements of that include the public input being understood, and then the internal engineering, technical, financial analysis, and given other constraints being done, and that analysis has to be brought back to the public, so it takes time back and forth, because nobody can answer some of these complicated questions and interactions on the fly. That is really a recipe for disaster. You cannot, of many kinds, management wise and implementation wise and cost wise. Okay, so Alan, thank you very
Yeah.
much for being here. I really appreciate your taking the time. Thank you, Alyssa, for the updates and insight and all the work on this. So I'm gonna move to the next item on the agenda.
You have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Can I
Marianne.
add something briefly? I have been in and out on the
Yes, go
phone.
ahead, Mariana.
I just wanted to add briefly to Alan's point. I know this is something we've been talking about a lot, and of course, understanding that these engineering projects take a long time. Just kind of reiterating the thought we've been having, the whole conversation we've all been having about how do we respond to these people having imminent safety concerns, tomorrow, and whether that's cones or 30 minutes of crossing guard. I hope we can find a way for the town to do both and respond to imminent safety concerns and work on improving conditions in the long term. Second point to the comment about folks complaining about the road work. It's a great example, I think, of how maybe TAC can be more of a liaison between the public and the town in terms of communication, and whether it's marketing, and maybe it's a sign that says, hey, this is what this project is. And I think a lot of people don't make that connection between understanding that, okay, this road work that is inconveniencing me is making our community better. And I think just understanding what the project is, or that a project is happening, could go a long way, especially in terms of general goodwill, as well as everyone getting their safety concerns met. Thanks.
Very good point. Thank you very much. Rebecca, did you have any comment you wanted to add in before I move on?
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much. I really appreciate this discussion and just the fact that we have town staff coming in to share their thoughts and updates and take input. So thank you guys for that. I did have a question related to the ranking going on with the list. One of the questions I have is whether in that, to Phil's point about making that criteria very visible, is there consideration in that of how many people from a community are behind a request? Because I know in some situations you have entire neighborhoods that are trying to get a town response, and I'm just wondering, Alan, if you could speak to whether that's considered. Thank you.
Yeah, so in that the list that I've seen, it's a people, places, infrastructure. And I'm not exactly sure what's baked into the people, but I think part of it is the amount of activity or impact, that this might have. For instance, something near a school might have a higher people count. The one thing that I would and I'm going to put it out for this group, and Phil, it goes to your point, and someone who's been in this industry for a long time said, I often want to champion the high need that doesn't get the voice because people just don't think about it. And one of the concerns I have is, and I will tell you, and I will share, I was informed that the complete, was it the complete streets, when we did the Sudbury Road 5-star intersection, it was a little bit of a knee jerk to a very vocal
Person.
person and some people, and you gotta do, how do you balance that with, you can, in this day and age, you can have a neighborhood group, emails allow everybody chime in. And I don't know if that is democracy or not, but I'm not sure how you deal with those, because should that dictate, because there's a group that's a little bit more organized? I don't know. I'm challenged with that, because technology allows that to happen very easily. And there are some neighborhoods in this community that are more coalesced than others. And do they get more attention because of that? Is that the right approach? I don't know. So,
Yeah,
put it out
I
there.
think,
Food for thought.
I think one of, rather than, I mean, this is an example of something where the public boards and committees have an important role, I think, in airing these things out and bringing into prominence both what is already prominent and what is important but not prominent, and so everybody feels heard and appreciate.
So I think this is sort of getting back to my point about making the scoring transparent, because to take that specific example, the issue with Sudbury Road and 7-Star Road was a public safety issue. And it was an issue with regard to school children getting from one neighborhood across that street to where the public school was. No crosswalk, no nothing, a lot of construction vehicles going at high speeds. The second project on the complete streets list was redoing Hubbard Street, which was, it's a nice street, it's very fancy, it's got a lot of nice houses and stuff like that, but not necessarily the same level of public safety issue, at least in my mind. So, how did those rankings come up?
Yeah.
Right? How did Hubbard Street rise to the top?
Yeah.
Or what became the second priority? This is where having the criteria.
We're in agreement.
Yeah, I wanna, no, but I wanna suggest something quickly, which is that, to me, one thing to avoid is the idea that you can have a single number metric for really important decisions. It's most of us, some of us like myself professionally, can handle multiple metrics. And there should be a very, very prominent safety metric, and then lined up with all the other financial and et cetera, service and all these other things. That safety metric should be very transparent and visible there as one of the criteria.
I think the financial gets into the prioritization side of things.
Right, that all needs to be sorted out.
And again, I understand the following, we're kind of in the, we're making the sausage, so not every piece is available, but let us get through this phase. I just want to give you a heads up of where we are. We're at the point where there might be this next opportunity, but very close. We're just not quite there.
Okay.
So can I say one more thing? I mean, we are people. I mean, that's the thing is, and hopefully we're all working together and we're all learning and we're all collaborating. We all have strong opinions about stuff. But at the end of the day, I think, to get to your point about ranking and stuff like that, there still has to be some human element of judgment, right? And eventually somebody's gonna make a decision. You're gonna make a decision.
Reach some degree of consensus, hopefully.
Right.
Because the public's paying for this. Dan, did you have a comment quick? I really need to move on, but I want to make sure.
I do too. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, I wanted to, certainly thank Alan. I just, in the public forum, it struck me that as people were approaching us, everybody views their own issue as the top priority, and they kind of don't want to hear that there are things that get prioritized over it. So I think the transparency in terms of ranking really does have to be paramount in our conversations, and in our relating it back to people who are just going to have to wait. But thanks for the presentation, Alan. It was very illustrative.
Yeah, you know where to find me.
Oh, yeah, but I also think that there's priorities. I mean, I like the concept of like the least vocal groups are not getting prioritized because they're very vocal, well-organized groups. And I'd say that safety is also a conflict problem in terms of the different types of users.
Well, some people give up and therefore they
Right.
don't participate
Well,
in public
Junction Park is a
progress.
perfect example
Yeah.
of pedestrians giving up because
Yeah.
it's now not really safe for folks.
Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda, which is discuss the new tax charge document. So
Okay.
I did reach out to the town manager and provide her with the draft that TAC prepared of new charge back at the previous meeting, and as we agreed. And she wrote back a nice message saying that I mean, maybe I should quickly read it into the record. For people who don't have it, it's posted also as current meeting document, I hope. Thank you for sharing the draft revisions to the TAC charge and for the opportunity to provide some feedback. In general, I think the proposed changes are very good and aligned with where I see the committee heading in order to provide the greatest value and benefit to the town. The updated language reflects a broader and more integrated role for TAC, particularly its engagement with residents, its advisory function across multiple transportation modes, and its increasing involvement in safety is first, infrastructure and mobility issues. I do have a few suggestions for considerations as the committee continues to shape the final charge. There are two bullets. One is resident expertise expectations and the other measurable annual progress. So resident expertise expectations is the existing charge includes language describing areas of resident knowledge or experience that are particularly helpful to the work of the committee. That is walkability, bicycle safety, accessibility, transportation planning, environmental impact. I believe this continues to be valuable and should be retained in some form. Clear expectations about desired expertise help ensure balanced representation and support TAC's ability to provide informed, high-quality guidance. The second bullet suggestion for inclusion is measurable annual progress. One strength of the current charge is its emphasis on measurable annual progress. Incorporating a similar concept into the revised charge would reinforce TAC's role in supporting long-term planning efforts and provide a structure for accountability and continuous improvement. This could take a variety of forms, such as an annual summary of completed activities, progress against stated priorities, or even a resident survey to help evaluate community satisfaction and emerging transportation needs. I appreciate the work that has gone into modernizing the charge and codifying the committee's expanding advisory function. Please let me know if it would be helpful to discuss any of these suggestions further, signed by the town manager. So does anyone here not think it's useful to put in a couple of these features in a compact way into the charge?
Sounds okay.
Yes.
I just personally would like time to
Yeah,
think about it,
So
process it.
okay.
When she says resident expertise, does she mean members of TAC should have these expertise?
Yeah, I think it clearly is basically saying that in the charge, it should mention that, specifically mention that there are certain types of knowledge or expertise that would be good to have represented in the membership of the TAC. Right,
Okay.
so
I think there are patterns in other committee charges that are like that.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
we could use. I'll look at that.
yeah, I mean, Nick, would you be willing to,
Sure.
for the next meeting, to just come up with a kind of.
This the next meeting
simple
is
way?
probably 5 or 6 minutes on.
Yes, yeah, no, you did a good job before taking
Can
Rebecca's.
you want it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, I mean, I
You're
think I give-
volunteering. We're not forming committee, that's up to you.
No, I'm
If you
volunteering to
wanna
help
talk- If you wanna
Nick.
talk, but I'm.
But I think the idea
that's-
of measurable progress is great. I think that's a feedback that's missing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do too, and it's
Yeah.
a challenge because things change during the year, so it's.
Yeah, I
With
would,
committees, it's hard to say, this is what we're gonna do this year, and then things happen and suddenly.
Yeah, I think taking some time to kind of meditate on the way to get
But yeah, I
the
think,
meaning in there, but not necessarily pin things down in a way that's not flexible.
I think we changed, TAC in particular has modified what it's doing in the course of a year correctly, I believe, in most cases. And as long as you're representing that in your
My
report.
personal
Yeah.
style is try to facilitate things getting done and don't
Yeah.
worry about bragging about.
No, I just think that, I
So I think
bragging, I
that's
think
what I'm
it's,
trying,
I think it's providing
I don't know.
public feedback, you know.
because pinning it, I know, sometimes seems to me to be bad luck.
You said
Bring
that-
bad luck if you try to.
But that is I'll just check that that's posted with the meeting docs.
It should be posted with the meeting doc.
It is posted with the
Yeah,
meeting
and
docs. on
it
the
was distributed.
advisory.
Phil.
So I think one of the ideas for the TAC has been that we would be the public
Mhm.
facing organization for people to come in with their
Yeah.
gripes about their
Yeah.
potholes.
Yeah.
And I think we still need to work through how that's actually going to work.
Mhm.
And how we'll work with the staff in terms of, you know, getting that information. So
Right.
people will, you know, will send a gripe to us with the, you know, that push button
Right,
on the website, for example. So maybe that's part of our metrics, right? Where we have how many gripes did we get? How, you know, how quickly did we get to the gripes? What did we do about the gripes? And then what actually happened? Because we're not implementers, right?
No,
We're
no, we
just-
can't,
We're not actually fixing the pothole. We're just, you
well, maybe
know,
measurement is about communication.
right.
And
So,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't, we don't
communication.
own,
Yeah.
you know, the engineering decisions, and I don't have a stamp I'm gonna put on something.
right.
But I think that there is a sense of, people are saying, well, who do I talk to? And just being maybe it's that we are the body that communicates between all the entities to the public and try to see how well we can
Okay.
do that.
And I think
without
that's, I'm not saying
Okay.
that's not an
Okay.
important function. I think it's a really
All right.
important function.
so.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to
Okay,
throw
Thank
that
you.
out there.
Unless Rebecca, Dan, or Mariana wants to add a comment, I want to move on to the next item. Don't see anything. Okay, so,
Nope.
next, go ahead.
No, nothing to add.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have an item here. We can just address this very shortly. Does anyone want to share something they saw or heard at the public in-person strategy workshop sessions, morning, afternoon of the November 19th? Any comments? I mean, I'll start out with saying, what I heard was individuals speaking about a particular street that they live on or are very concerned about local, very focused kind of safety concerns. I mean, that seemed to be the reason that people were showing up. And also another comment about that, many times people told, you know, or not many times, the people who told me that often said, and this has been a concern for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So I heard frustration with
So I-
specific.
I heard a compliment on Stantec also on the quality of the discussions, and I heard a lot of people being grateful for the presentations and thought that the presentation was done very well.
Mhm.
So that the venues for input were easy to navigate, and so I think that's, you know, something I did hear. I did hear, yeah, you're always gonna hear the personal complaints, but I also heard kind of, I'm gonna call them corridors. You know, whether it's Upland or Conant and cut through problems, but I go back to, I think it's what I'm hearing. And maybe I'm inputting my own feelings, is the importance of defining corridors that many people, as we're saying, like many people use Route 62. Concordians and people from Acton, and so that therefore having a solution, or at least keeping that high up. What is the solution all the way along? And I think the Assabet Bridge is always gonna be a problem, but you know, it's like considering that as a corridor that it's not, not losing the corridor for the multitude of point solutions.
Yeah, no, I think that's another form of prioritization in terms of. You know,
Yeah, maybe that's-
benefit.
I think that would be a really good discussion point at TAC sometime.
That would.
about
Yeah,
This concept of corridors and the trade-offs may be the wrong word, but sort of the balancing act you have to do between throughput for vehicles, safety for the public, and how you achieve that. And one of the fears I have is some of the ideas that people come up with are counterproductive in all dimensions, you know? If something's a corridor, or whatever, if there's a traffic light someplace and you put in a, for some reason that they have to slow down anyway, and you put in a speed table there, you're not doing anything, they have to slow down anyway. Because
Yeah.
there's some other reason to slow down.
It's an interaction.
Yeah, I would love a discussion and tack and to just
Okay.
nominate one, maybe 362, maybe there's something else, and
Well, I
discuss.
think the concept of corridors and how you
Right.
balance the needs in the corridor, a generic corridor, not some
Yeah.
specific one, but.
Well, we could, and we could also
Yeah.
have, invite some public input, on that. and-
Right. Poor thing, I mean, I hate to be, I will say it again, I call them use cases, what are people trying to do?
Yeah, yeah.
And so
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
other thing, like, I'm
That's-
trying to get
that's
to the
also-
doctor, I'm trying to like get to
Right.
Crosby's
Use
for
the
returnable.
Language and terminology matters in communication, getting people on the same
So
page.
corridors and use cases.
Corridors, use
What are you
cases.
trying to do? That's what, as a marketing person, I think about.
Yeah. Dan, Rebecca, Mariana, any comments about observations from public at the workshop sessions? Rebecca?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, what I heard was just to reiterate the appreciation for the opportunity to give input. I think though that there have been a number of opportunities to give input. So then I also heard the hope that it actually leads to some real changes to improve safety.
That's a good point. Mariana, were you,
Yeah, I heard a lot of positive feedback, and nothing really specific to add. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that as well. I mean, I felt badly for the people that, we've been addressing this for 10 years and we don't seem to get any response. So I think that they were pleased that there was a forum at least where they could air their concerns. But I think, getting some action plan would just, be nice to be able to give them some sort of an answer.
I think, picking up on what Dan's saying, I think one of the major issues that we've been encountering and talking about is the public's concern about the issues, but total lack of understanding about the budgeting, about the money and what's available. And maybe there's something we should be doing to make the public more aware of how the town spends its money. So that it might motivate it to agitate more for more budgeting for traffic and safety.
right, and I
Right,
think,
and I think it's fair enough. I mean, there's a huge amount of money we spend on one or two things in this town. And they ain't safety and they ain't the roads.
right, that's true, that's true. All right, I'm going to,
So-
go ahead.
I just have one other comment in
Yeah.
terms of the context of the way that the meeting
Yeah,
came up,
Yeah.
which turned out to be really great because at least from my personal perspective, because I did have a chance to meet with Dr. Firth a couple of times, both riding my bike around and then at the forum that he presented. It was almost as if it was Transportation Week in Concord. There were all of these- It was all of these different, maybe it wasn't intentional, but maybe,
It took a toll on me.
sorry, Mark.
No, that's okay, that's.
But I think maybe we should think about doing something like that again, because I think it helps people to get focused on a topic.
That's
Yes.
very.
It
interesting
allows the
idea.
public to have multiple opportunities to take a crack at participating, and gives different people.
That's really good. And it helps with
Yeah.
education.
Yeah,
about-
yeah, I
Right.
mean, that could be a session on finance.
Yes.
Right. Because, actually, it's one of the bigger budget
It's that been
items,
an engineering design of the
right?
process.
So let's think about it again. for
That's a
next
good
year.
idea.
The engineering design process, that would be a very good one.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
role of the engineering stamp.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
There's some great disasters out there.
Oh, yeah.
Examples like
Oh,
the Rhode Island Bridge. the
To
Washington
engineer is
State Bridge.
human. is the
Well, that
title.
also could be a metric too. It's like,
Mm.
how many public workshops.
Oh, yeah,
forums
yeah,
that
metric for
people,
TAC, yeah, that's true.
Every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, workshops. All right, I'm gonna, now move on to liaison comment. Paul, would you like to comment on any of the many things we ranged around?
Good
Or
discussion.
anything else?
Probably be redundant to what was said before. I think this new emerging process, which is converging infrastructure and public safety, is really the way forward, and I think this is going well. A lot of things that were discussed today, I think are kind of in the rearview mirror. And in terms of how the safety input and public input got into the process. And so I appreciate those real concerns, but I'm looking to the future, and I think this process is really gonna help. I just describe this process as getting order from chaos. And the chaos, with all due respect, the public creates important chaos by valid concerns getting into the process through multiple channels. And it's just, I think this role of TAC is kind of as the portal for that important input. I'm sorry, don't take chaos the wrong way. It's good chaos. But I think to have all that public input vetted through the TAC process to get it into there, because a lot of it's important, not all of it's actionable. And so I think that vote for TAC is really important. I think the question of prioritization, how projects are prioritized, I talked to Alan about that whole process has to be more transparent than it is now. And I think that's the thing. And there's various criteria, and the weighting of the criteria, and the weighting of the criteria may be project specific. Where in one case there's a lot of community input. So I think that their criteria then this weighting, and I think on the safety side of the TAC can play an important role in having to weight those criteria, which I don't think the consultant, I've been a consultant, without the public can do. Consultants are great, but they're not the public. They provide the framework in the public. We need that public input into the dual Stantec process. So yeah. What I got.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna open up the floor unless anybody else on staff wants to comment. Open up to public comment. I ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes. And is Betsy still here? Betsy, you had your hand up a long time during the discussion. Would you like to make a public comment? If not, I see Jeff Alls has his hands up. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, thank you. Jeff Alls at 78 Nimrod Drive. I just want to mention this discussion about Main and Baker, I think is great. I'm glad that it's being discussed, but I also think it highlights kind of how the process in the past has been going wrong. I feel like very early on, someone wrote a scope of work for the engineers to redesign this intersection, but Complete Streets was never brought into that scope of work. And someone on town staff or someone with oversight should be making sure that safety, complete streets for a project like this are brought in right at the start. So I really hope that this work with Stantec and the public info gathering brings this sort of role to the forefront for projects like this, where someone early on is making sure that complete streets, like on Main Street, which has been highlighted as a desirable connection between West Concord and Concord, where something like this gets brought up right at the start and not at the 11th hour, like Alan mentioned. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Betsy. Somebody's
Whoops.
speaker's on. Betsy, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Identify
Okay.
yourself if you wish.
I'm Betsy Olson Mikowski, 1741 Wedgewood Common. And I just wanted to say I really appreciated the discussion today and Alan Cathcart being here. That's why my hand was up so long. I just wanted to say that, hearing from him, I think is one of the most valuable uses of our of the time in this group. Just you know, as a member of Mothers Out Front, we recognize that like we can't have safer streets without this team and without Alan and without all the members, you know, that are working so hard on this all the time. So anyway, sorry, I get all teary. Whew. I wanted to let you all know I really appreciate your passion, your brilliance, and just your commitment. And I know that there's going to be strong disagreements, and we're going to have these back and forth times that may be difficult, and things are going to happen that are going to, you know, people will feel insulted. And I don't want to minimize how painful that is, but I also recognize that that's part of the process of changing and making improvements. So, and also I'm like recovering from back surgery right now, so I'm sorry if I'm even more emotional than usual.
Hope you feel better.
Thank you. But yeah, so I just wanted to say I really appreciated the discussion today and all the work that each of you are doing. That's all. Thank you. And as Mothers Out Front, you know, we want to be on your team as well. So
thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to take
one more.
We have some comments in the room. Okay, go ahead.
My name's Josh Bergel. I'm
Josh.
39 East Circle.
Do you want to come sit at the table here? It might pick up better. Let's make sure that. Could you repeat your name?
Sure, Josh Bergel, 39 East Circle in Congress. I am the person who was referenced multiple times by Alan, not by name.
So I'm not sure why that was. Have you met with him?
No, I've never met him before.
Okay.
But I just did. So thank you I thank him for coming like everybody else has. I'm surprised that that's an unusual thing for TAC, because one would think that TAC would be overseeing, would be fully aware of all of the transportation improvements in town and be able to like cite all of the decision making that's been going forward. So I'm sort of surprised that, you know, you can't necessarily. Specific to the Baker and Main intersection, Jeff All said it very well. It seems like it was a failure in the writing of the scope to consider complete streets. There's a 50-foot right-of-way on Main Street. Why can't you include bike lanes? It's kind of geometrically wise, you know, a 50-foot right-of-way has room for, you know, 5-foot bike lanes, 11-foot driving lanes, and 18 feet of extra space for sidewalk and trees and all those other things. So why can't that fit is the question that I started with. I looked at the spaghetti of the existing conditions. They did a really, really good job of consolidating everything down. And like from an engineering perspective, it's really good. Except there's a 10-foot median, painted median in the middle, which takes up all of that extra space. So why not use that for safe routes for everybody? So that's where we started. I sent the designs to engineering. They are considering them. And like I said in my emails, which many of you have probably seen, it's basically paint. So changing of lanes and lane widths. So it's not a huge infrastructure or design challenge. It's just a reimagining this for every user. So
Josh, could you just mention your professional qualifications so that people understand the context?
I'm a landscape architect, professional landscape architect. I work in town. I've worked in the past for all kinds of different public agencies, including MassDOT, DCAM, MBTA, and many municipalities. So I understand the process. And I've worked with Jacobs and with Stantec, both as a sub-consultant to them as a landscape architect and as a prime consultant where I've hired them as engineers. So I know that every different engineering firm has a different flavor. or a different sort of way of working. I like where you're getting to with Stantec and their planning and engineering department. My job as a landscape architect is as a generalist. I understand the culture, the safety, the engineering, the budgetary, the political pressures of a project. And it's important, you know, to have all of that, even touch one intersection. This intersection hasn't been fixed because it's really difficult, right? For a long time, that's really expensive. A lot of infrastructure that's being fixed now hasn't been fixed. So I understand why it hasn't been fixed until now, and it's a big project. That being said, I also understand the engineering mistakes that can be made because you're all of a sudden in a fixed mindset of we have the design done, everybody likes it, and we're just going to finish it and stop taking input. So having continuous input, that leads to things like, you know, accidents where, you know, people die. And that is the last thing that I want to have happen, you know, in our town.
Okay, yeah,
So
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for being engaged and very proactive in this. And I think, you know, it's very important that we have a better process
yes,
and that the public really understands about schedule constraints, where the professionals need, you know, what the professionals need to do, what the public needs to do, back and forth, because yeah, and you know, there can be a lot of misinformation that's not helpful, but there's a lot of information that is helpful, and I really appreciate your coming here and doing this, and I'm glad that you got to meet Alan, because it's going to be important to have your input.
sure. Thank you. One more thing, I worked with Steve and engineering staff on the 7-Star Sudbury Road project.
Oh,
That was also me.
Mhm.
So like I said, met multiple times, and what Phil said earlier about the need for that to rise to the top was for public safety.
Yeah.
100%. It was a dark box of prioritization, I thought. And you know, the history of it is that it ended up fitting in the budget after the Hubbard Street project took up most of the budget. There was a small project that could fit, and it also got done. So that was kind of the history.
We've got some more public comments. Linda, did you want to make a public comment?
Have you, sorry that I never have seen that. Is that something you've sent to TAC? Or could you send, what
I
are you?
can send this to TAC.
That would be
yes.
nice.
This is my analysis of the Main Street, and engineering has this as well, so.
Yeah.
I mean, as a member
Yeah,
of PAC,
if
would
you
be really helpful.
you can send it to me or Elisa or Heather. Send it to Elisa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get your address.
Hey, Sandoval.
Okay. Sandoval.
ASANDOVAL, that comes from another. Correct?
No.
All right, we have 3 online comments waiting, and if people are patient, I'm very willing to entertain them, but let me first go to Linda Neiman, who's in the room.
I just want to do what Betsy said and thank all your hard work and what Alan has been doing. And I think it really comes down, as mentioned a couple times, that what our priorities are, and it's not like, oh, if it's a project that's been decades in the works, you know, we just want to finish it. It really should be about safety. And if we find at a later hour that it really is a safety issue, then we should pause and take a look and reevaluate. If we need to get more funds for it, then we should. And so, and I also want to emphasize Ellen's point that this current design might be more of a liability than a change. Given all the folks that are living in the area and that will be living in the area and utilizing that corridor. And then as far as the master list, that, you know, this prioritization would be, again, transparency is really helpful, but part of that would be is if it's part of a comprehensive plan, is it just like a whack-a-mole, like sections, or is it part of these connected corridors that has been discussed And that these corridors should be the low stress tolerant corridors that would accommodate the majority of people. As opposed to, just putting people at the paint on the side of a really busy road. And that also could be one of the metrics for CAP. How connected, if it's part of a comprehensive plan, you can talk about how you're filling in all those gaps to make a truly connected corridor. And as part of that, Jeff had mentioned potentially having someone at that role, make sure that these oversights aren't happening. And I know on the charrette that we did with Stantec, that one of them was having someone like a mobility planner that would serve that position. So that I just want to reiterate amazing that would be to have someone in that position. And that last question is for you, Elisa, for the Stantec survey. Is it possible that they can keep it open a little bit longer, maybe to the end of the year? I mean, is there a particular deadline that they're trying to hit, just so we get more feedback from folks?
Yeah, they are trying to hit a deadline of finishing the plan, a draft likely in February. So that would push it out because then you have to incorporate all the feedback that goes into the plan. So I could double check.
I'm just thinking, because it's like a really busy time of the year with the holidays at this end of the year. So a lot of people, they
How
might
long
not,
were you thinking?
just to the end of the year.
Yeah, so
You really
December
think
10th
much?
now
I would
and-
just question, if people are busy, that's the period where people are busy,
Mhm.
so.
Right, yeah, but a lot of people are on break too, so they're more
Mhm.
likely to do these things.
I can ask them today. I mean, it's technically closing tomorrow, so.
Or what is,
Can-
do they have a
I can
target
make
for the
that
number of
request.
people they want to have feedback from?
Maybe you should talk to Lisa after.
Yeah.
if she asks me. Okay, I'm gonna go back online. Jeff?
Thank you, Mark.
Collins,
Jeff Collins, 55 Highland Street, Jeff Collins. Sharing others' appreciation for the conversation today. Two highlights for me were the comment about Mass DOT engaging in or understanding the need for safer crossing at Route 2 and Route 62, and that Public Works and Planning Division staff are working closely together. That's fantastic. I think the most constructive thing I heard was, I believe it was Andrea Solomon's suggestion that there be a formalized project review process or a more well-established process where major projects come in at 25% design, and there are conversations, iterative conversations as those plans move forward. Reflecting on the Baker and Main project, just using this as an example, since that's been the conversation today, my understanding is that, and I'm sorry, it seems Alan has left the room. He could maybe correct me if any of this is wrong, but I'm not sure when the project page went up, which is on the town website. There was what's currently called a proposed draft final plan, which is online for public reaction, and in the title, to me, communicates feedback welcome. There was a neighborhood meeting in September, I think, a presentation of the Public Works Commission, October 28th, and then this, to my knowledge, is the first long, detailed conversation at TAC. I could be wrong about that. Also on the project website, it says we're hoping to get to construction this fall, 2025, which obviously that's not going to happen. But all of that to me communicates that that there wasn't public input wasn't scheduled. The project page also says that Public Works plans to go to West Concord Advisory Committee. I don't think that has happened or is planned to happen. So just want to voice a frustration while recognizing the tight timelines, budget, all these complications of the project, and appreciating Alan's engagement here, that to say that these comments are coming at the 11th hour of a project, it may be 11th hour for CPW, but public didn't really know the clock was running.
Yeah.
So I think those earlier opportunities for input, genuine input and conversation when the project can be influenced, and CPW can come back and say, well, we looked at this and it can't happen for these reasons, that would give the public greater confidence that the complete streets policy is being implemented and concerns are being heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Appreciate it. Karen Jordanay, I believe.
Yeah, Karen Jordanay, 66 Upland Road. I appreciate the conversation we've had about the Baker and Main intersection, and I'm very glad we had it. And I want to be optimistic that Public Works is going to take the feedback, and we are going to see a solution that embraces the complete streets methodology. The one other thing I want to bring up is if anyone on the committee did not have the opportunity to either see or attend Peter Firth's talk, I would highly recommend you take the time to watch it on the YouTube Minuteman Network. There is one thing in his talk that I think could benefit the town, benefit pedestrians and cyclists both, that is low cost, recognizing the concern about budgets. I think we've heard over and over again concern about the speed limit signs. Speed limit goes up, speed limit goes down, speed limit goes up, speed limit goes down. And I think that there is a mistaken understanding of the effort that it would take to take down a lot of the older signs that are encouraging the speed or allowing the speed over the 25-mile-an-hour speed that has been adopted through town in thick residential areas. So that's a low-cost thing that we can do that will benefit safety for pedestrians and cyclists both.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
Can I just respond to Karen?
Yeah, just
Or
briefly. Yeah, go ahead.
Follow up. The speed limit issue is one of my pet bugaboos, and there is a process to change speed limits, which involves select board and the town manager. I've been repeatedly telling various members of the select board since about 2021 about the evolution of that process, which is now relatively straightforward and tried in a number of municipalities throughout the state. So I think one of our roles, if this is possible at a future meeting, is to discuss the issue and to make a recommendation to try addressing the issue, perhaps as a pilot, to see if everybody can get used to the idea, to see if the select board can feel comfortable that taking action, which they are now legally permitted to do, will not result in adverse consequences.
Okay.
So
good. Yes, that's a good thing for.
If we can put that in a future meeting, because I think the idea of getting away from rewarding 80% of whatever the traffic is so backwards.
I thought we were partway there. Or
We've discussed it some.
Okay, but we should discuss that, and
Thank
that's very important.
That's a great.
I think the sacrifice that motorists, including myself, need to make to say it'll take me longer to get somewhere and I shouldn't leave getting out of the house till the last minute, all that is definitely an important trade-off in favor of safety.
Yeah.
I really think we need to think slow is safe. Gina Stark, thanks for being so patient. Thanks for hanging on. Would you like to make a public comment?
Yeah,
Why don't you identify your location if you don't mind?
Yeah, Gina Stark, 512 Thoreau Street. In all these discussions, we obviously have some really big projects, and I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, that the town definitely has a big job coming ahead, and I do not envy anybody involved in that process. I would like to say, however, it's great seeing different departments and committees coming together and discussing things more. But I would like to point out there seems to be a missing link here between where we stand and the big projects coming up. And we really need to have some sort of interim safety accommodations, especially during the winter months when there's snow on the ground, and cones are not going to provide those safety accommodations. So I just wanted to kind of point out that because of the timeline on some of these large projects, which I totally get, the town really, I would like to encourage the town to really come up with a interim safety plan, especially around schools and the town centers where there are a lot of children, and older people and, just overall pedestrian traffic. So that's all.
Thank you very much. Interesting you mentioned the winter because when I studied to get a license, I believe it said that, you know, there's a speed limit, but you're supposed to adjust it downward based on conditions like nighttime and winter and things. I don't know if there's any legal ability to say that the speed limits are 10 miles an hour slower if it's wintry conditions and things. I mean, anyway, it's just.
Drive under the speed.
I know,
Really?
but what I'm trying to say is from
Put that in
enforcement,
there.
we
I mean,
have,
And that's only in the other 49.
we
states,
have
right?
been, we have
We don't do
been,
that here.
we have been told that it's not, it doesn't work to write tickets unless somebody's going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, you know, for whatever reasons. Which basically means that you add the 25 limit means 35, and we know
35,
some people go 40 and it's easy to hit the gas, etc. But anything that can push it down.
So I mean, one of the things
should be
Gina's saying is pointing out to me, what Gina, you're saying interim safety accommodations.
Yeah.
I think there should be short-term temporary accommodations, for example, you know, to see what the impact is and then measure.
This, in the current
So
charge,
measure, test, I think we're missing a step of, you can have a temporary solution to measure the impact, especially with. as Custer gets
this
more
is
serious.
authorized and described in the current charge for the traffic management group. That group itself, which maybe now is being reconstituted, can
To temporary.
authorize those temporary things and then later take it to the select board to make them permanent. So I'm just saying that this is a concept that's been there, but maybe, and is being used sometimes, but maybe needs to be kind of more publicly prominent.
And maybe it's not just traffic, it's all modes.
Yeah, and that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
An idea of having something that's temporary, and I would say maybe TMG, I don't know, it seems like. I wanna measure it, I wanna see, you know, test something and measure it, that's what I think
Yeah,
would be responsive.
experimentation in complicated things makes.
Right, I think it's more responsive to the public and would help people feel that they're being heard.
All right, it's now 11:18. People have been very patient. I'm going to adjourn the meeting and thank everybody for being here and contributing.